Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Healing Voice podcast. My name is Lance Howard, and I'd like to welcome you to Season 11, Episode 4, titled Predestined for the Good. This is my translation of Romans chapter 8, verses 28 through 30. And the brief summary of this is, the affirmation is all things work together for the good. But what does that actually mean? So, as some of you already know, I do a project called Bible Redefined. And in short, I do the project because in my teenage years, I realized that the Bible was not written in English, and that in fact, the original languages of the Bible had much more to offer than the typical English translations. So I've been studying Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek since I was a teenager. And at the time, I called myself a Christian. And as I was studying these languages, it did help me. It did encourage my faith, but it also helped me deconstruct my Christianity. It helped, and I ended up deconstructing Western Christianity. And when I was studying in college and I took a church history course, there were just so many parts of studying the ancient language and actually understanding how the languages work, and therefore how the Bible could be translated. It just encouraged me to think, and to think for myself. And that what I was hearing in churches, and in televangelism, and in Christian music, and Bible studies, and conferences, and all of these types of things, the whole world or culture of Christianity, what I was hearing didn't always match up with even the English words of the Bible, but there was certainly room for growth when comparing Western theology to the data points or the information about God as portrayed through the ancient languages. So, with that being said, I would like to conclude this introduction by saying the Bible is not a religious book. And we must also understand that the Bible is a collection of books. Okay. So in this one book called the Bible, we have a collection of a minimum of 66 books. I say a minimum because there are other books that were left out. They are easy to find. They are easy to study. And in my studies, a lot of the books that were left out fit right in perfectly fine. They don't disagree or contradict the books that were chosen by the Nicene Creed of, I believe it was 315 AD. You should probably do a history lesson on that on your own. Just the Nicene Creed under the rule of Emperor Constantine or Constantinople. There was a group of men, I'm going to call them politicians, who decided what books would be kept in the canon of the Bible and which books would be discarded. And of course, as a free thinker, my first issue is, well, this is my relationship to God. So who's going to tell me what books I should read and which ones I should not, as far as my relationship to God goes? So now that you understand a little bit of my mindset, you can see perhaps why I've been encouraged. I have felt motivated and inspired to pursue a work like Bible Redefined, redefining or retranslating it with full respect, as much as I can, to the fullest capacity of my own knowledge, which I hope is growing every day, to draw out the truth from the ancient words and do my best to put them into English words. And it is a difficult undertaking because sometimes we don't have words in English to describe these large ideas that are timeless and spaceless and also very poetic. But I feel fortunate that the wisdom somehow comes to me, flows through me to bring these large ideas in and through the English language so that we, the Western reader and listener, can have our minds and hearts opened, broadened, widened to be more receptive to a greater reality, which is this beingness we call God. So that's an example. Me saying this beingness is one way of trying to pull out what the ancient words say when we have the three-letter word God. Where does that come from, right? There's an ancient word that is not English, and that is where we come up with God, God. The problem is when we think of God, God, we think of a man in the sky, perhaps sitting on a throne, perhaps holding a scepter, perhaps having a throne on his head. He has white hair. He's all-knowing, maybe fiery eyes or something. He's eternally judgmental. This is what we think of. Typically, this is what we think of when we hear or read the word God. But I've come to understand through the language of the Bible itself that that's not a very accurate picture. And that God is more like a beingness, which is to say living and alive, but also in intelligent and creative, one, but also many. And in fact, many times when we read the word God in the Bible, it actually comes from a plural word, Elohim, meaning gods with an S. And this can all be a bit discombobulating, perhaps, to realize that, when it says God in the Bible, it oftentimes is actually saying gods. But what does that mean? Are there multiple thrones and multiple white-haired men? So let's expand our mind just a little bit on this word God. I'll say let's expand our minds a little bit more on this word God and gods. One way of translating Elohim is the one who appears as many, or the one that is also many. This is one way that we can say or translate gods. In fact, in Psalm chapter 82, verse 6, it says, "You are gods." And if you read that chapter, you'll realize it's speaking to humans. You are gods. Okay, well, that would be an application for Elohim, wouldn't it? In fact, as I'm speaking to you, I'm going to look up that passage, and since I'm just talking from the top of my head, as they say right now, I'm going to go to the passage, Psalm 82, verse 6. I'm going to look at the word gods, and it is, in fact, Elohim. And in a typical Western definition or dictionary of the word Elohim, it says gods in the ordinary sense. I'm reading this verbatim to you. But specifically used of the supreme God. Occasionally applied by way of deference to magistrates and sometimes as a superlative. Okay. Elohim is the plural of Eloah, which means deity or God. That's all fine and good. But we've already established that our idea of God is what we're up against. The idea of a person, a man, when the actual language, the Eastern language, okay, so what I'm saying now is the Western dictionary will not always suffice to help us understand these words. You have to find an Eastern dictionary meaning it's going to be written by Eastern thinking people who probably live in the East, right? They have the Eastern experience of life, and therefore they're going to tell you the meaning of the word according to the East. Why is that important? Because the Bible is an Eastern book. The Bible is a collection of Eastern books, ancient Eastern books. So if we want to get as close as we can to the meaning of the words, we have to find dictionaries that are explaining or expounding upon the ancient Eastern definitions of the word. The definitions I just read you of Elohim and Aloha, those definitions come out of Western dictionary. And therefore they will be a bit watered down and a bit inaccurate. Okay, so back to Elohim. Elohim, I am trying to help us understand in the passage that says, the passage is Psalm 82, verse 6. It says, I have said you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. There it is. Even in a simple English translation, it's clearly saying that human beings are gods, Elohim. So this is helping us expand our thoughts about this word God, right? It's not just about the man on a throne. There's something more. There's a whole lot more. And the word being applied to humans doesn't diminish the word at all. If you've been following my work, you already understand how that can be the case. It gives more credibility to this beingness called God, to know that humans are included in this, I guess I'll call it very important, powerful, archetypal descriptor, the three-letter word, God. So now to the passage. The passage is Romans 8, 28 through 30. I recently sent out the email for this passage. So if you go to my website, lancehoward.net, which is the same as thv-tv.com, under I Am University, you will find Bible Redefined. And there's a library, and you can sign up for the newsletter because the library is ever expanding and being updated. So what you see on the website for Bible Redefined today, it will be updated by tomorrow or next week, let's say, and definitely by next month. So the only way to know that the updates are happening is to receive this newsletter. And I'll say, hey, this is the passage. Here's a brief summary. Here's the link so you can go straight to it and read it on your own. Contact me if you have any questions or like a consultation on how to apply this in your life. So I recently sent that out for Romans 8. And the way this is going to go is I will read you the typical translation of the verse, and then I'll read you the way I've translated it, and I'll refer to it as the THV version. Okay, so here's Romans 8, verse 28 through 30. Verse 28, as it is typically translated, reads, And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. And the way I translated it in the THV version is, Moreover, we are aware, all things, everything, anywhere whatsoever, always, in every condition, in every particular relation, in all respects, cooperate synergistically in powerful co-laboring partnership toward and for the beneficial excelling, distinguished honor, pleasant joy and happiness, and advantage of those who love. Okay. And then I have to explain what love is, because kind of like God, we have it all wrong. Love is a 4-letter word, and there's so much rich content to the character of love. So here it is, love. Those who love are those who have simple presence in the awareness of goodwill and affection within, for, and as sacred unity. And sacred unity, by the way, is another way of translating the 3-letter word God. sacred unity. Okay, those who love are those who know the interdependent one and the sameness of unity in diversity. And by the way, unity in diversity is another way of translating the three-letter word God. Furthermore, those who love are those who know the interdependent one and the sameness of unity in diversity. Did you guess that unity and diversity is another way of translating the three-letter word God? Those who love are those who experience the essence and nature of the cooperative, interconnected, self-worthy universe. The original self-presence of I am, an intelligent power and force of life. The one true moral and ethic that gives definition to all others. The original relationship of self to self, breath to breath, I am to I am, as one in the Great One. Those who are being invited according to the measure of, through, with regard to, by virtue of, in succession with, and after his intention and purpose. Okay, that was verse 28, and I'm actually going to read the THV version again, and I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to read right through. Here's verse 28. Moreover, we are aware, all things, everything, anything whatsoever, always in every condition, in every particular relation, in all respects, cooperate synergistically, in powerful co-laboring partnership toward and for the beneficial excelling, distinguished honor, pleasant joy and happiness, in advantage of those who love, those who have simple presence in the awareness of goodwill and affection within, for, and as sacred unity. Those who know the interdependent one and the sameness of unity in diversity. Those who experience the essence and nature of the cooperative, interconnected, self-worthy universe. The original self-presence of I am, an intelligent power and force of life. The one true moral and ethic that gives definition to all others. The original relationship of self to self, breath to breath, I am to I am as one in the Great One. Those who are being invited according to the measure of, through, with regard to, by virtue of, in succession with, and after his intention and purpose. That's verse 28. Oh, now we could just sit with verse 28 and unpack it more and more and more. And you can hopefully, just from that one verse, you get an idea of just how large this ancient wisdom is. You see, what religion has done is totally watered it down into something so simple. And by simple, I don't really mean that in an advantageous way. I'm saying so simple in the sense of it being sophomoric, in the sense of it being immature. It's leaving out so much. It's leaving out so much that you don't walk away with the sense of, oh, there's so much here for me. I could chew on this information and be transformed by it for the rest of today. There's so much here about simple presence and sacred unity and the interdependent one and the sameness of unity and diversity, and the self-worthy universe that is cooperative and interconnected, and the original self-presence of the I am, and the original relationship of self to self, and the one true moral and ethic. All of this is defining love. Because all things work together for the good of those who love God, was how the typical translation says. So we have to unpack what love actually is, while we're also unpacking what God actually is. And the funny thing is, another scripture, 1 John chapter 4, verses 8 through 9, or 8 and 16 maybe, they say God is love. And that's what's happening here. So this is Romans 8. You can go to the website, lancehoward.net. You can find it, and you can even read along as I'm reading it to you, and that may help for you to actually see the words and see how some of them are capitalized. It's a beautiful experience. I'm telling you, it's more than words on a page. It is a living, active experience that will transform you if you'll let it. And if you need help connecting to that, then contact me. Okay, here's the next verse, verse 29. It typically reads in verse 29, "For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers," or brethren. Okay, here's how I translated it. This is verse 29 of the THV version. "Because as concerning those the Great One knew beforehand, foreknowing them, the One predetermined and foreordained, prepurposed them to be jointly formed, similarly co-formed and fashioned like, having the same form together in symorphosis, having been changed for symphonic completeness, having a part to play in sacred unity, being conformed to the same shape, nature, image, as a copy, resembling the likeness of the Son child, so that one might be the firstborn, the first in rank and foremost in time, place, order, and importance, the beginning, influence, chief honor and principle, in, by, with, among, and as the presence of, in the nature, soul, and thought of many born from the same original womb, as a united family." I'm just going to read verse 29 one more time. "Because as concerning those the Great One knew beforehand, foreknowing them, the One predetermined and foreordained, he prepurposed them to be jointly formed, similarly co-formed and fashioned like, having the same form together in symorphosis." Symorphosis is the Greek term that's used to describe having been changed for symphonic completeness, or having a part to play in sacred unity, or the sacred song. Okay, they are being conformed to the same shape, nature, image, as a copy, resembling the likeness of the Son child. So that one, capital T, capital O, so that one might be the firstborn, the first in rank and foremost in time, place, order, and importance, the beginning, influence, chief honor, and principle, in, by, with, among, and as the presence of, in the nature, soul, and thought of many born from the same original womb. Wow. From the same original womb as a united family. The commentary, I'm going to read you a little of the commentary here on verse 28 and verse 29. So verse 28 is one of the most powerful verses in ancient literature. If we can truly understand all things work together for the good, we will easily see good come into our lives and experience good in increasing measure that will also spill onto the lives of those around us. And then on quote unquote good, I recommend you see my translation of Genesis chapter 1 with attention to how everything that was created was considered good. Okay, so if you're like, well, what is the good? It's all around you. Everything in nature is the good. Everything is, in a sense, pointing us to the sacred one. This beingness called God can be seen in nature, and it is all good. It's all good because it's in a flow, not a flow, in the flow. And it's beckoning us to get in the flow also. It's beckoning us to understand, encouraging us to understand this affirmation that all things are working together for the good. It just is true. And if you can connect to it, you'll be able to see it everywhere, including every relationship, including the ones that frustrate you. Because after all, if all things work together for the good, then all things work together for the good. We don't get to discriminate on what all things are. All things means everything is working together for the good, including the things that you haven't been able to understand, including the things that have been confusing, including the things that feel like drama and have caused trauma and perhaps feel like need to be healed. All things work together for the good. Okay? This verse speaks of those who love the Great One as also being those who are called or invited according to sacred purpose. And the truth of this is not in any person's action, but only and always in the truth of reality. Okay? I'm going to read that again. This verse speaks of those who love the Great One as also being those who are called or invited according to sacred purpose. The truth of this is not in any person's action, but only and always in the truth of reality. In reality, all of us are called because all love the Great One. The Great One is, hopefully you are connecting to this. The Great One is another way of translating the 3-letter word God, right? So this is a cryptic saying, but when you understand the truth of identity, you know this truth to be inevitable and unavoidable. Love is the only reality and is the core of every person. Love is the core of you and is the reason they and you and I seek anything at all, namely the experience of love. Love is the underlying reason behind every reason, regardless of how twisted or distorted the reason has become at the whim of your ego and my ego. That doesn't matter. Love is the underlying reason. Love is the reason why we are able to do anything at all. How can I say that? I can say that because the Great One, okay, the 3-letter word God, the beingness, the grand intelligence that holds the universe together, the grand conductor that keeps the song in flow from beginning to end, is love and is the underlying reason behind every reason. You are a part of a band or a part of an orchestra or a part of a basketball team, or you are a part of a family. You are part of a group and you have a role to play and you hit a wrong note. You say a bad word. You made a bad shot. It doesn't matter. You're still part of the group. You're still part of the orchestra. You're still part of this grand song that is playing, and your one shot doesn't mess up anything at all. It's just one bad shot. It's just one bad word. It's just one bad note that you played. The conductor is still there conducting, and all things are still working together for the good. This is the song of life, the song of the universe, and you are a part of it. You are a welcomed part of the family. Love is the underlying reason behind every reason, regardless of how twisted or distorted the reason has become at the whim of your ego. And if you can read this, you would see that when I say love is the underlying reason, there's a capital R on that reason. But then the other words, the other reasons are lowercase. So I'm differentiating. I'm saying love is the underlying reason. Okay, God is love. So God is the underlying reason, capital R, behind every reason, lowercase r, regardless of how twisted or distorted the lowercase reason has become at the whim of your ego. So God's reason, the great intelligence, that reason and that purpose might become a little distorted through your self-expression. You hit a wrong note. But the original reason, the original intelligent purpose is behind the action, or I should say gives you the power to act at all. The ability to say anything at all, even though you said a bad word. The ability to play a note, even though you played the wrong note. Yes. Love is the underlying reason, giving you the freedom to act even though you might mess it up. Love is the underlying reason. Love is the only reality then, and is the core of every person, and is the reason we seek anything at all. And what are we seeking first and foremost? It's love. How can that be? It must be because the song is about love, the song of our life, the song of our universe. We come right out of the womb seeking the connection and the intimacy, meaning the closeness, right? That's the instant desire and deep soul understanding that love is all there is and is really all that matters. It is so ingrained in us, and it is so much a part of us that we don't even recognize it. Everything we are chasing in this three-dimensional world is ultimately about love. If I could just fill the hole in my heart with whatever it is, that person or this person or that plate of food or this car or this much money or that job or that plaque on the wall, it's all because we want to feel good about ourselves, and love is the ultimate way of feeling good about ourselves. Love is the reason behind the reason. So verse 29 then, the commentary for that verse, all are foreknown, and so all are predestined to be conformed to the image. Now about the image, you want to see Genesis, and that would be Genesis chapter 1 again, about how man was created in the image of God. Love is the image, right? Because the image of God is another way of saying the image of love, because we said God is love. Love is the image to which we are being conformed. Okay, so this is another way of saying everything that I said previously about love, and trying to unpack why love is the only reality, or the reason behind the reason. Love is the image to which we are being conformed. It is the image we are made in and made for, but we are not always acting as love. So this is why we're being transformed or conformed to the image. It is already imprinted within us, all of us. And then there was the Greek term, I told you, symorphosis, as a way of saying, let's see, symorphosis is a way of saying having been changed for symphonic completeness. Symorphosis meaning having been changed for symphonic completeness, having a part to play in sacred unity. That is symorphosis. Symorphosis. Symorphosis is the regulation of biological units to produce an optical outcome. Symorphosis is when a quantitative match of design and function within an organism defined within a functional system. Symorphosis can be broken down into the three predictions that are required for organs to evolve within a species. This proposes that if organs were matched structurally and functionally and paired with the correct energy and minerals, the body would create an organ of optimal design. Some examples of this in the human body could be how the respiratory system distributes oxygen, how bones are structured to withstand stress, how blood vessels are designed to distribute blood throughout the body without using a lot of energy, or even how, as a person becomes more physically fit or endures more cardio after their body has adjusted to maintain higher functioning demands. The use of symorphosis can allow for fields of science to work with the field of evolutionary biology to better understand adaptation. Essentially, symorphosis, typically translated as conformed, all right? The Greek word is symorphosis. It is typically translated as conformed. I'm saying this word means the support and process by which an organism is transformed. How the greater wisdom moves a lower functioning part in the evolutionary direction of adaptation, enhancement, or upgrade for greater alignment, purpose, and cohesion in the song, in the universe. Maybe you've heard me talk about the universe before. It's a uni and it's a verse. Uni and verse. It is one song. Uni, verse. One song. Unity in diversity, which is another way of translating the 3-letter word God, or add a S to it, God's, unity and diversity, or sacred unity. This is the life that we live. We are living it. We are immersed in it like fish in water. Sacred unity, the sacred universe, the one song. So this term symorphosis means the support and process by which an organism, meaning you and I, can be transformed. How the greater wisdom, capital G, capital W, the greater wisdom moves a lower functioning part, meaning we humans, we ego-driven humans, lower functioning part, in the evolutionary direction of adaptation, enhancement, or upgrade for greater alignment, purpose, and cohesion with the great I am. The great I am is another way of saying God. Everything we encounter in this 3-dimensional experience is for this purpose, your transformation. And that's why we have the affirmation in this podcast, in this scripture, all things work together for the good. That is the affirmation. That is the affirmative belief. And finally, here's verse 30. It is typically translated this way. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified. Okay, here's the way I translated it. Verse 30, this is the THV version. Moreover, those whom the Great One predetermined, foreordained, and prepurposed, that one also called, encouraged, stirred up, in order to cause to pass from one state into another. And those the one stirred up, the one also made right, rendered just, free, innocent, declared guiltless, acceptable, pronounced sacred, aligned with the self, in balanced relation with self and cosmos. And those made right were also esteemed and held in honor and dignity, returned to their original state of power and point of departure. People, this is the promise. This is the reality that you have access to. It already belongs to you. That you have been predetermined and foreordained and prepurposed, and you've been called. That means life is life, the intelligence, the great one, the universe, God, okay? The beingness is calling you, encouraging you, trying to stir you up so you can pass from one state of existence into another, so that you can go from one program to an upgraded program, so that you can go from version 3.0 to a greater version. And since you're being encouraged and stirred up, then that means you've already been chosen. You've been made right, rendered just and free and innocent, declared guiltless, acceptable and pronounced sacred. That the reality of things is you are aligned with the one true self, God. That you, in reality, are in a balanced relation with the self and the cosmos. That is your nature. That is your being. That is your true identity. But everything in this 3-dimensional world is telling you that you are separate, that you are unworthy, that you're not good enough. And all of this is the narrative that we create out of the relationships we have with other humans. And the other humans are also predetermined and being encouraged and stirred up to go from a lower program to a greater program, or to receive the upgrade, right? So we can't take their actions and their words to mean anything, because they're in the same process of being upgraded that we are. What we must do is cultivate and take responsibility for our own relationship to the Sacred One, God, the beingness that is in and throughout the universe or the cosmos, coming to us from the spaceless, timeless space-time into the 3D, because everything is working together for the good. God, the beingness, the great life, is reaching into everything that is happening here, from the growth of the grass, the changing of the seasons, the healing of your body because you had a cut on your hand or you broke a bone, all of that. Symorphosis. Remember the word symorphosis. It's about upgrading the biological system. This is the beingness that we call God, and it is always at work with us and for us. Therefore, all things are working together for the good. Can you see? Do you understand? Do you sense the power of this? That you even taking a breath right now and hearing the sound of my voice right now is the great symphony at work. It is the power of conscious awareness, another way of translating the word God. Conscious awareness, that you can be aware and move and tell your body what to do and what finger to move and everything that you're doing and will do is because of the great conscious awareness that we have called God. And that presence, that simple presence, has already called you and pre-purposed you for this upgrade. What is the purpose of the upgrade? For you to realize that your sense of I amness has always been connected as one with the one and only great I am. The great I am is the beingness that we have called God. The one true conscious awareness, the one true reality. So, in practice, what do? The affirmative belief is all things work together for the good. This doesn't discriminate against the dramatic and traumatic events of the past nor the future. This means you have the capacity in consciousness to revise your awareness of past events, regardless of how bad they may appear in your mental projection and emotional experience. You have the power to revise your awareness, to change the story, to change the narrative. Now, the ego will say, why would I want to change the story? Why would I want to change the narrative? This is what happened, or that is what happened, and this is what they did, and it was awful. That's the ego speaking. The reason why you would want to change the narrative is because the narrative you are holding is not the true reality. Have you been listening to my words? The true reality is God is love. The true reality is all things work together for the good. The way you can revise your awareness is by looking for the good in the things that happen. You have to look for it. No one can do it for you. You cannot ask me, well, what good could have come out of that happening and the way it hurt so-and-so and that. The problem with the questions is that if you're not actually curious with humility, you're asking for the wrong reason. But if you ask with true curiosity and humility, it's like, okay, I would like to see the good, and I'm going to calm myself down. This high emotion that I have that is borderline angry and it's definitely frustrated, I'm going to calm myself down because that's what a curious, humble mind would do. And I'm going to look for the good. For example, if you go through a breakup or a divorce, I'm choosing my words carefully here, but I'm going to speak the truth. It's going to be direct. If you can't find the good, ooh. If you can't find the good in your breakup or your divorce, it's probably because you haven't done the work to realize how you contributed to the way things played out. Because every relationship means that there are two people. Two people. Okay, so listen to this then. Maybe you weren't the highest offending person in the relationship, but maybe a possibility is you turned a blind eye to some things that you sensed were happening, and you tried to ignore them, you tried to sweep them under the rug, you made excuses for the other person when they were acting out in certain ways. Okay? So you didn't commit the greatest offense, but you still committed an offense by pretending like nothing was wrong or thinking it would just magically go away. You saw or sensed the red flag in some kind of way, but you ignored it. This is a way in which you can begin to see the good. Wait, how does that work? How can I see the good by just finally recognizing that I played a role in things falling apart? This is a process, people, but here it is. You can find the good in that because eventually you'll humble yourself and realize, oh, I actually contributed to that not so wonderful situation. Now, why did I do it? As I'm asking myself why I did it, it may dawn on me that it's really advantageous for me to figure out this why I did it, because once I figure that out, I'll never repeat the pattern again. There's the good right there. There's the upgrade right there. Okay, that's just one simple example. There are so many narratives and so many stories to tell, so many narratives that we hold, and I'm not saying all of them are simple. Maybe that was a simple one. Maybe not. Here's another thing. Don't get into narrative trips about other people's lives. That's none of your business. Why do bad things happen to innocent people? Is getting into a narrative trip about other people's experiences that you know nothing about. Just don't do that. In your ego mind, you do not have the capacity. Yeah, there it is. Sweet and simple. You don't have the capacity in your ego mind to understand what anyone else is going through because you do not live in their shoes. So don't pretend that you understand how hurt someone must be. Not ever. Even if it's something similar to what you've been through before. It's like, oh, I've been through, well, not the exact same thing, but, I've been through something similar. That's not good enough. Even if two people are experiencing the same thing, let's just say two people watch a swan land on a lake. They are looking at the same event, but their narrative about the event is not going to be identical. And guess why? Because they're not standing in each other's shoes. They're standing 6 feet apart, seeing the bird from two different angles, seeing the light hit the bird from two different angles. And one person is kind of afraid of birds, and one person absolutely loves birds. And there are so many things about that even if you're standing there together watching it happen, you're not having the same experience. Another example is in the courtroom. We have witnesses show up and they start telling their version of the story, right? And they don't all tell it the same way because they're not all the same people. So don't narrative trip about other people's experiences. That is not your duty. That is only the ego wants to do that. Okay? Stop the arrogance. You don't know that much. You can only see things from your perspective, and even your own perspective is not correct about your own experience. So how dare you try to assume you know someone else's experience. There is good to be found in all of these things. And if you can't see it, well, that doesn't mean there's not good to be found just because you can't see it. It just means you don't have the sight just yet. But you could if you will calm yourself down, find the curiosity, remain humble, and let the great intelligence, which is calling you to the upgrade, let it guide you. When you do this with all your senses and immerse yourself in the revised event, meaning changing the narrative, you will transform your self-image and therefore your life. When you realize you can change the story and find the good, your self-respect will level up in a way you never understood before, and you will be transformed. The way you see yourself will change. You will have more esteem, more confidence, more self-honor. You will put up with less garbage from people than you ever have before. And you'll put up with less garbage from yourself, meaning you'll start making better choices, healthier choices. Your current life is the result of what you believe of yourself through the narratives you hold. The ego will resist this. The ego is always looking for someone to blame rather than taking responsibility. But the proof is in the pattern. Haven't you noticed the same types of events and people keep finding their way into your experience? You are the common denominator, the way you think and the way you speak. You are the creative conduit through which these energies are continually attracted to you. The solution, in short, change your thoughts, revise your past by recognizing the good that can be found. There's always a way to do this. It may not be easy, but it is possible. If you are struggling with this, feel free to email me for a consultation, thvtv@protonmail.com. I think that's all I have to say about being predestined for the good. Romans chapter 8, verse 28 through 30. It is a wonderful passage of ancient Hebraic wisdom. It is not a religious matter. It is just pure spirituality. Spirituality is a way of saying spirit reality. And remember we said love is the only reality. So here we are. Spirituality, spirit reality, love is the only reality. It is all one thing. Now, I would like to conclude with this about spirituality. There is the religion of spirituality. The way I would define religion, I'd say it's being legalistic in our beliefs. Like there is a religion of spirituality that is still rigid and kind of hard-headed and stiff-necked and double-minded and half-hearted and legalistic. But spirit reality, okay, love as the one true reality, and the definition I gave you of love, which was found in verse 28, all that stuff about sacred unity and the interconnectedness and the self-worth of the universe and the one moral or the true moral that and ethic that gives definition to all others, and the awareness of goodwill and affection. All of this is how broad the reality of love is. True spirituality is all about love. And realizing that love is not a verb. Love is the beingness. Remember, God is love. And God is definitely not a verb. God is the beingness, the great intelligence, as we've already said, the great conductor. There's no verb in any of that. Spirit reality is what we're talking about. True spirituality, which is synonymous with love. I hope that these ideas are just, again, opening your mind to see. My culture says God, and my culture says spirituality, and my culture says love, but my culture doesn't really know what it's talking about. There's much more to be said about that. How do we find our people then? Because if you realize you live in the matrix, How do you find the others who also realize that we're trying to set ourselves free from the matrix, which is just to say a way of thinking. We have found ourselves in this cyclical, habitually ego-driven way of thinking, and that is the matrix. And we've become willing participants in the symmorphosis, right? In the transformation and in the upgrade. And it's very humbling. There's no ego self-righteousness here. It is the great one who has pre-purposed us or predetermined and foreordained us and is encouraging us and stirring us up. It is the great wisdom that is declaring us as sacred and speaking to our hearts in these gentle whispers. And it is the great one who is assisting us in this process of symmorphosis, which means as we go through the upgrade, this biological system called my body is feeling the change. It's a heavy load to bear as we go through the upgrade, as we go through the shift, which, if your eyes are open, you can see is happening at a global scale right now. The shift is real. The symmorphosis carries us whether we want to go or not, whether we're even aware that it's happening or not. We might think that we're just sick, like physically sick, or that, like, why can't I hold my emotions together? That's the upgrade. That is the call. That is the invitation. Will you surrender to it? It is the great I am calling to you. Can you hear that? Can you accept it? That it is the great I am calling to you? It is the great I am calling to you. I have a question for you after saying that. The question is this: who is listening to the sound of my voice right now? If your answer is I am, then maybe, just maybe, you make the connection that the great I am is calling you. It is one with you. It is the voice that you hear when no audible voice is even speaking. Now, the ego has a voice too. And that's fine. You know the difference, because one is healthy and life-giving and the other one is life-sucking, draining the energy out of you. One of them is encouraging you to make the next possible best move, and the other one is speaking, I don't know, maybe mean things or negative things especially. And that's okay. Remember, the affirmative belief is all things work together for the good. So even learning the differentiation between the voice of the ego and the healing voice, which is what THV stands for, even learning the difference is how all things work together for the good. The only way you can know the good is to be intimately knowledgeable about the bad. The only way to know the daytime is to know the nighttime. The only way to know the positive is to know the negative. You see, you can find the good in every narrative. It doesn't matter how bad, quote unquote, or evil, quote unquote. All things are working together for the good. You got this. It's your birthright, the great I am. You may check out the identity process that I wrote. You may, especially after this talk, really be interested in my latest book, The Shadow of the Self, which is all about understanding the difference between the ego and the one true self. My name is Lance Howard. I will speak with you again soon. Thank you for listening to the Healing Voice podcast. Share this with someone today.